Okay, so now that we're all sad, that's great. Let's get even more sad. No, you're not going to find this surprising. Not if you've been hanging out with me online or in person for a while. The biggest impact on your thyroid. What do you think it is? I'm going to give you 5 whole seconds to come up with what is your thought on this. What do you think? It is your body's personal burden of stress, and I'm going to get into what that looks like. So it's stress. Stress is the biggest contributor to a thyroid not functioning. Here's how to think about it, because stress just feels like one big thing. Am I just supposed to stop the big stressors of my life? Like, I don't know, I don't have a job. I'll just get a job and then my thyroid will come back online. It's not as easy as that. Sorry. Let's talk about personal burden of stress. So I've just started talking about this quite a bit on social media because it's finally coming together and makes all the sense in the world to me. And I think this will bring it in easy to understand terms so that you can know what you need to do for yourself. So jot down ideas on your notes today of where you think some of these pieces are coming from. So we're on page 4 of notes here. Write down some of the things that could be contributing to your own personal burden of stress. So external stress, that's the first type of stress. So external stress is, I just lost my job. I'm living through a pandemic. That is totally external stress. External stress, other things. Oh, we have to make another car payment. Where's that money going to come from? Our teenager just slammed the car, God forbid, into something and there's $5,000 worth of repair. Where's that going to show from? External stress can also be EMFs, the dangers of electromagnetic frequencies or Wi-Fi stuff. So can you turn Wi-Fi off? P.S. That is one of the things that you could do as I go to turn off the Wi-Fi on my printer right now. As it's on next to me, turn it off. So Wi-Fi for sure can be part of the external stress, your own personal burden of stress. Other external stressors, toxins in our environment. If you work in a place where they have to use a lot of chemicals to clean stuff every day, well, now we're adding to the external burden of stress. Yeah, that's a stressor on the system because you're going to absorb that through your mucosal linings of your lungs if you're breathing it in, or your skin if you're coming in contact with it. Or your eyes, if the fumes are coming through your eyes, if you're a painter, right? The external burden of stress, if you're living through a pandemic. Make all the list of things, Luca, make me so sad. Here's the piece where we can work on today, internal stress. So internal stress is where I specialize. So internal stress is when your body is not digesting well. If you have a hard time digesting, it's adding to your internal stress. If you have a chronic disease of sorts, doesn't matter what kind, it's adding to your internal stress because there's inflammation there. So that chronic inflammation, internal stress added on. Internal stress also, let's see, internal stress, blood sugar regulation issues. If you're hangry, that's a sign saying there's a lot of internal stress. If you have hormonal imbalances, that is a surefire sign of internal stress. If you want to know more about this internal stress piece, that's the inflammation class that I've got. So internal stress is if your gut's not working, if you're not digesting, if you've got inflammation going on, a chronic disease of some sort. Or internal stress can be driven because you're not getting the nutrients from the foods you need. Maybe you're not eating the right foods either. Maybe you're eating foods that actually create a lot of inflammation in the body. So there's a lot to unpack in there. And we'll put this is where the majority of our recommendations and the practical pieces to put in place, this is where the majority of them come from today. But I want to add that there's a third type of stress, and that's the emotional stress. So emotional stress it's exactly what you think it is, right? If there's any stress between you and a coworker, between you and a family member, a partner, a spouse, if there's a strained relationship in your home or with extended family, with your in-laws, with your own parents, with your own children, or the emotional stress of being a caretaker of somebody who has a lot of care, for sure that adds to your emotional stress. And further to this, if there's a history of trauma, whether you're currently living through a traumatic event where there is violence in the home, if ever there was violence or neglect from younger years in your current life, and they are now tracing emotional stress and that trauma from 2, 3, 4 generations ago, and how the biochemistry that emotional trauma brings on is hardwired and passed on to generations. So now not only are we talking about your own trauma, your own emotional stressors, but that of those who came before you, and it's compounding. Holy Toledo, Luca. I know. So if you need support on any of the external or the emotional levels, let me know and I can share with you some resources to help address some of those for sure, because I can't help you with that stuff. The emotional stress, I have a list of local mental health professionals and organizations that might be able to support you and or a family member to help you through things. Or the external stress, if there's worries of losing your job and those types of financial stressors, let's find some resources to support you. The middle piece, the internal stress, that is everything that I do. Everything that I do. If you just want the free stuff, good God, there's tons. Go look in all my social media spots. Everything I do is about reducing that internal burden of stress. That's my specialty. So start there. Now, here's the deal. Whether it's external stress, internal stress, or emotional stress, they all trigger the stress response. The more you trigger the stress response, the more damage there is to the internal stress stuff, the more adding on of internal stress there is. Because in that stress response, here's how it impacts the thyroid directly. During a stressful event, your body, with that stress response in the body, there's many things that happen, one of which, it shuts down digestion. Because 2 million years ago, this meant that you had to run out of harm's way if you had a stress response because there was a saber-toothed tiger there. So in that moment, stress shows up. Whoop, never mind about trying to digest. You just need to get out of harm's way first. Digestion is a really super energy big function. So in that stress response, digestion gets shut down. So now you can't break down your foods into nutrients. You can't get the nutrients from your food. And now you start to impact digestion. Can you now get the nutrients you need for your thyroid to function? Can you get the nutrients you need for brain function? Can you get the nutrients you need to make a baby? Can you get the nutrients you need to run after your grandchild at the park? Starting to wane, isn't it? The internal stress and that stress response from all three levels. So, sorry, the stress response itself. One of her jobs is to slow down the thyroid. Your stress response slows down your thyroid. Because 8 to 10 generations ago, how many of us had people in our lineage that went through a famine? Everyone, just about everyone. There's some currently going through a famine. There were times where our people went through famine to the point where you had families who had to decide which child they would feed at dinner. They didn't have enough food for all of their children, essentially deciding which child of theirs they would die in the night. How is that not emotional stress, first of all? Second of all, this lack of nutrients. The people who survived the time of scarcity the most were the people who, part of the stress response, started to slow down their metabolism. For example, you need 2,000 calories, right, a day to function. So those who in that stress response started to evolve with a hampering of your metabolism by slowing down your thyroid, now you could get through with 300 or 400 calories. And the people who developed this as part of the sort of evolution of the stress response lived to tell the tale and have babies. And those who didn't died because they didn't have enough nourishment. If you slow your metabolism down, now you can make a smaller amount of calories last you for the day. So we all come from people who had a scarcity of food, a scarcity of calories. And in the evolution of that stress response, now we developed a shutting down of the thyroid. But here we are in 2021. I think we have more stress than our ancestors did. And I'm not taking away from the fact that they also had stress, but we now have the external stress driven by you're not good enough, you're not doing enough. It's a terrible time to be alive, blah, blah, that we just get the message all the time that everything is wrong with the world. It's not, P.S. I think you can seek out joy. I think there's a way to combat that. And that's, I think, part of our solution. But the external stress, the internal stress, and the emotional stress, the deal is that over time, all three add up to that total burden of stress. And that total burden of stress is higher than it's ever been. Part of our body's stress response that's evolved now, is that our thyroid gets shut down. And now you start to slow down how much phone calls that thyroid can make. And you start to slow down on every other function in the body.